Hey, welcome to Stream Up Consciousness. This is Kevin, and we're going to. I need to silence that particular computer. Okay, this is my Stream of Consciousness live stream, and this is where we just look at current events and I'm going to comment on them. I tend to focus more on film and TV entertainment, as well as science and technology, but that's how I've got my news aggregator configured, though it does throw in many current event news stories. But it does tend to focus on arts and entertainment as well as science and technology. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's see here. Supermassive black hole may pose threat to Earth. Seems very clickbaity. Let's take a look and see what they're talking about here. Oh, it's a video. The real question is, how far away is this black hole? Scientists have reclassified a nearby galaxy. A nearby galaxy. Okay, just FYI, how close is this? I mean, nearby galaxies are probably well over 500 million light years away. And a light year is how far light travels in 1 year. So if it's like 500 million light years away, 65 million, 657, I'm sorry, 657 million light years away. So it might be a threat in 650 million years. So that's clickbait. That is such clickbait. God dang it. It's suckered into. Star Wars finally answers Return of Jedi's most disturbing mystery. Wonder what this is. A new Star Wars comic is finally answering a disturbing mystery that was introduced at the beginning of Return of the Jedi. Jabba's palace is one of the most well-known sequences in the original trilogy because of how well it placed the heroes in uncharted territory. The rules for Jabba the Hutt's domain are so bizarre that the palace feels more alien than any planet in Star Wars universe. In the Star Wars universe. However, one mysterious detail regarding a certain droid in Jabba's palace was never truly explored. Now, in celebration of Return of the Jedi's 40th anniversary, a new comic is finally going to give fans the story behind Jabba's original protocol droid. Oh, this is like one of those, I never cared in the movie. I still don't care. Oh, you didn't know that? It's an ad. We're not going to. How to help with gun control. 12 things you could do now to stop gun violence. I can already tell by the 4,000 dislikes, it's probably totally political. Let's see what they have to say. Educate yourself about gun control. And you basically have a list of every group that wants to ban guns. But okay. Contact your elected representatives. Tell your story. Let the data speak for you. Far more people die from cars, whatever. Address specific legislation, okay? Support gun sense candidates for office. Encourage like-minded people to vote. Donate to candidates who support gun control. Donate to gun control advocacy groups. Join a local gun violence prevention organization. Hold a social media fundraiser. Run for office. Join protests and rallies. Talk about it. Keep fighting. Here is the main issue with gun control. We have a constitutional amendment that allows you to protect yourself from foreign threats, domestic threats, and your own government. The founding fathers saw the founders, I won't call them the founding fathers, because in many ways, Betsy Ross was a founding father, but she's female. So let's say the founders of this nation rightly saw that the only way a citizen can stand up to their government is if that citizen can stand up to the government with the same level of potential force as that government. Now, we've equivocated on that a great deal. As the ability to wage violence by the government has increased, we've justified not giving citizens that level of ability. And mostly it has to do with the negative externalities of an individual wielding that kind of weaponry. Like, we don't want an individual to have access to a nuclear bomb, setting it off in a city because they are mentally disturbed. But at the same time, because of our constitutional rights, Congress, well, not Congress, but the courts have seen that, hey, we can't just eliminate this right wholesale because we feel that people shouldn't have guns. They've tried to respect that. Well, the only way you're going to get rid or create the gun control that so many want is to get rid of that constitutional amendment. That requires 2/3 of the legislature of the federal government as well as the states to make that happen. And I've got to tell you, it's not going to happen. So a lot of this is more or less virtue signaling, trying to make themselves sound better. Honestly, it's sad, but it is what it is. Musk invites Twitter fact checker community to check Biden's condemnation of MAGA Republicans. I follow some black guy, YouTuber, and I started following him because of the whole Gamergate thing, and I was definitely on the side of the gamers during the Gamergate brouhaha that happened in, was it 2013, 2014? But as of late, and Derek, the guy who runs Some Black Guy, he had some pretty good opinions at one point in time, but lately he's delved into, or it's like he took the red pill, but then he's like Cypher in the Matrix. He originally took the red pill, but then when some of the, how would you say, creature comforts, and as that applies to YouTube, it would be the threat of not getting invited to the right parties, the threat that YouTube might silence his channel, that kind of thing. He's essentially asked the Matrix to be put back in and has, swallowed the blue pill and wants to get back in good with that particular group. He literally came out and he was bad-mouthing the whole Gamergate movement. But he just recently did a video where he was saying groomer now is just a buzzword that's only perpetrated by or used by right-wingers. Now, I myself am not really right-wing. I have some views that, particularly as it applies to economics, I think that the whole idea that you can tax the very wealthy and somehow create prosperity is nonsensical at best. And I don't really buy into the income inequality argument. Nothing a rich person does is taking money out of my pocket. The only thing that rich people have done to take money out of my pocket is supporting politicians who want to regulate the economy, who want to make my energy more expensive, that put barriers between me being able, and you'll find a lot of rich people who like tax deductions and things like that because it's something they can afford to spend money on. They can get that CPA that will go over the tax code and be able to find every deduction. But if you're not rich, it's extremely difficult to do that. And if you've started a new business, the burden on that new business owner is so much higher than it is with a company that's got 100 CPAs working for them and can do everything to take advantage of the laws that have been put on the books. So whatever. That's not my point. My point is MAGA Republicans is just as much a buzzword as, say, groomer. Now, in defense of using groomer, and the whole gist of it is the whole drag queen story hour. When I grew up, there was no such thing as a drag queen story hour. So this is definitely a new phenomenon. And people who call these people groomers, they're calling them groomers because there's an attempt to normalize that behavior as just one of as though it's very common. But ultimately, the people that are being called groomers are the ones who want to introduce ideology, gender ideology, into grade school age children, and they're being called groomers because they're trying to normalize that behavior. And so I don't necessarily find it, while I might, it's like this. The ancient Greeks, at different eras in ancient Greece, had literally, at times a very bisexual society. Many young men, 13, 14-year-old guys would go to the gymnasium, and that was basically the schools back then, and they were being taught by other men, often 10 to 20 years older, and it wasn't necessarily a frowned upon, depending on the era. I mean, it wasn't like a blanket thing throughout all of Greek culture, but it wasn't uncommon in Athens, in that particular city state, at different eras of Greek culture, to engage in sexual relations with their students. And the militaries of that era in ancient Greece, they were often, they would fornicate with each other. The soldiers, instead of carrying or dragging a wagon train of prostitutes behind them, they point each other. Okay, but so yes, if you want to get people more accepting of sexuality, of differing sexualities, making kids not care about it would possibly be a way to go. But they're wanting to do this stuff against parents' wishes. And that's where the problem really starts to come in, because if a parent doesn't want their child to be exposed to this, that is their right as a parent. But the schools literally are trying to hide this from parents, and that's where the problem really comes in. If you as a parent want to teach your children to, hey son, you can date guys, and then date girls or whatever. And let me just preface all this. One of the things I think the gay community, which I'm intimately familiar with, one of those things, and just this familiar, one of the things that mistakes I think that they've made, and I think that sociologists and psychologists have made in general, is they're trying to argue that gender is a spectrum, but sexuality is static. Now, I tend to favor the view that sexuality is actually what's a spectrum and is fluid, and that it's literally gender's dimorphic. It is formed at birth. And in this whole idea of trying to separate the word gender from the word sex, to me that's a postmodernist construct to try to say you can be any gender you want. It's socially constructed, but it's not really socially constructed. It's ingrained in your DNA. But some of you would be ready to admit this, and some of you may not. But many boys go through life 12, 11, 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that age range, might play around with some other boys. But then they grow up and then they get married and never do anything ever again. Okay. That's an example of having a fluid sexuality. They were ready to play around with other boys when they were little boys, but as they got older, they found themselves interested in women, and that's where they centered on. And some men, they get to be 50 and then they go back the other, they revert. They go back to guys. Just the way it is. But that's neither here nor there. I was just kind of disappointed that some black guy was just trying to say that this concern that parents have about people trying to influence their children is just a right-wing talking point, that groomer is a buzzword, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It really isn't. There is an issue, and if we're going to call out buzzwords, let's also call out MAGA Republicans or transphobic. I can guarantee you right now, not a single person who doesn't want this sexualism ideology taught in schools isn't afraid of transgender people. They just don't want their kids taught this. Same way with homophobia. Now, I will say there are some men that are actually afraid to come out, and they tend to be, before coming out, tend to be very violently opposed to coming out. And they constitute a great number of the men who will seek out and violently harass gay men. So homophobic does have an element of truth, but the transphobic, no. Let's go on. Used Tesla Model 3 prices are collapsing along with other EVs. Well, good. Supply and demand. The more supply and the less demand, the lower the prices. So the more supply or the less demand, the higher the prices. So you might see that happening from both sides as Tesla ramps up production and gets more of them out there, the more the price should come down, as well as demand starts to level off, the price should also come down. I have nothing against Teslas, but I think that people see them as almost like a save us completely, but they don't really put in a lot of thought into where the energy has to come from, the costs of battery replacement, the environmental costs of creating batteries, creating electric motors, and just a wide set of issues that get brushed under the carpet in the push to go to electric vehicles. I'm interested in watching this series. I've seen the ads. It's got that one guy who played the patriarch of the Lannister family from Game of Thrones. What's his name? Charles Dance? Yeah, Charles Dance. Yes. I liked that actor, and if there's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie called The Last Action Hero. It came out like in the 90s. Watch it. Charles Dance in it. He's freaking just perfect role for him too. He's deliciously evil. But I've been thinking about watching that. What the hell? Okay, I don't have time to go into this. I've already been doing this 20 minutes, but if you cannot criticize the trans movement, it's a religion, more or less. And the people who are refusing to allow any criticism are basically they're priests of that religion, and anybody who doesn't abide by the tenets of it are apostate. And there's a lot of things that people think aren't religions that really, when you really dig into it, I'm an atheist. Good example here. I don't think there's a God. Not in the sense that, say, a Christian might think there's a God. But when you start looking at the whole idea that gods are just higher order beings, you'll get atheists who argue against that even. But so many of these same atheists are absolutely, well, first off, they're fundamentally base everything they do on there's a lack of evidence, but they take that lack of evidence on faith because you can't really prove a God. So there might be something literally sitting right in your face that is all the evidence you actually need, but you haven't really constructed a way to ask the question properly to see that as evidence. So you have a deficit in actual knowledge that prevents you from seeing the answer. And I have been classified as agnostic, but I'm not agnostic. I really don't believe in the metaphysical God being eye in the sky thing. I literally believe that what we've considered gods probably have been our creators all along, but they're not alien. They're not, metaphysical beings. They're physical beings who tried to represent themselves in the best way they could, which was as gods, or we interpreted their existence as gods. But whatever. The whole trans movement is a religion. Atheism is often faith-based as well. So many things that we think of as fact is faith. Yellowstone is back. Haven't even tried watching that series yet. Yes, there's still hope for life. Drake's equation. All right, I got to get out of here. Y'all take it easy now. Peace out.